Mastering rook endgames is so crucial for your chess improvement, and this series will present you the most important rook endings in a structured way. This time we will check positions with a pawn on the 7th rank, the attacking king in front. And that's the first position. How can white win this one? So in general, the problem is that the white king cannot come out here. The black king blocks him here and the black rook blocks him there. So white needs to get rid of one of them. And I will show you the technique to do this. And after this video, you can apply this in your own games. So first of all, we are usually trying to expel the king because this is, way easier than trying to expel the rook, and give this check here. So now the king needs to make up his mind where to go, and we will discuss all the possibilities because it's really about understanding all the details and understanding all the ideas in those kind of endgames. So let's start with the move which is kind of easy to beat, which is king to e6. So now the white king has gotten some scope to move, and when you do this, you should always check, is there a perpetual, are there some annoying rook checks? And here it's just not the case, because the rook checks, they would be coming from here, but sadly for black, the black king is in the way. Also, there is no check on c8 because the white pawn covers it. So you might wonder, should black actually resign here? Well, almost, I would say. If I was black, I would try to find some mating threats against this white king, because the white king is cut off at the rim of the board, and sometimes you can try to checkmate him, for example with rook to h2. But this time it's just a bluff, and white can take a new queen anyway, because rook h8 is not quite made. White has rook to f8, saving the king and winning the game with an extra queen. So this king e6 is really easy to beat. So now we will try to beat also the stronger response, king to g7. We will then also check king to g6, which has some nuances and is a bit different to king g7. But in general, we will apply the same principle, which is called the bridge. And to really understand it, we will first figure out what the problem is if we just do the very simple king e7, trying to promote the pawn immediately. But now there is a problem, because the rook will check us, and if we try to run away, then we need to stick to the pawn. Okay, we can do that. And then the rook will continue checking. If we now go to the d file, he will check us again, and we need to go backwards, guarding the pawn. So we might consider, we could go to the b file then. But then the rook will attack the pawn, and after that the king would need to return here, and white has not made any progress, and at some point he would probably need to hide the king away here, and then there was no progress. Of course it's still winning, but white needs to go all the way back. So instead of running out of his hiding place immediately, white should use his rook. And the rook is usually used to shield the king from the checks of the enemy rook. And the perfect square for this is rook to f4. Either you remember this by heart, that it's f4, or you understand the logic. I'm always a fan of understanding the logic. Why is this rook better on f4 than on f5 than on f3? So the rook needs to do two things. It must be close enough to the own king so that we at some point will be able to interfere here with rook to d4 if black starts checking. And at the same time, it needs to be distant enough from the black king so that the black king cannot harass our rook immediately. And f4 is just perfect. The black king cannot attack us, and the white king will, be close enough that he can use the rook to shield himself. Let's have a look. So now the king would be running out again, and black would continue checking, but at this point, black continues checking, and then the king goes to the 5th rank. And after this check, white needs to protect the pawn, but he can do this by rook d4, interfering, and black cannot avoid the promotion of the pawn. Black king is too far away, and the black rook is not in time to come around. So that's basically it. But we will, as I promised, check all the tries, all the hidden details about it. So let's have a look. What if black would actually be waiting here? Because, sometimes I see this going wrong in some beginners games. They would try to bring the rook here, for example, but actually rook to f5 would be a big blunder, because you always need to be aware of this tactic. Black is sacrificing the rook, but white cannot take it because the own rook would drop, and this check doesn't help, as black's king is still staying in touch with the white rook. So, and that's the way to spoil it, but white has this winning move, for example, rook to f8. This is very easy. Now the pawn and the rook doing the job themselves, and if they start checking, the king will just run to the b file, for example, and then approach in some zigzag manner. And this time rook to d1 is not in time because the rook is already on f8, supporting the pawn coming to d8. So rook f8 is a winning move, but I will show you another technique, which is going rook to g4. Rook to g4 is a very key principle, because in rook endgames it's usually good to cut the opponent's king off, and it's also good to cut the opponent's king off even further. So after rook g4, the king needs to go even to the h file, and this is of course far away, and now we have way more motives than before to convert this. For example, here we would have the freedom to go just here and here, and if the king would go to h6, then we would probably have several ideas. For example, we could combine trying to promote the pawn by some mating threats, combine it with some interfering with the rook. So here just a lot of lines are winning, but in general it's a good thing to cut off the opponent's king even further, and when you get a chance to do that, it's never really bad, it's always good. So that's it about this one. We will check the last response by black, which is going with the king to g6, with the idea knowing that the white rook is best placed here because it is close enough to the white king and far away enough from the black king. That's why black is saying, okay, I'm getting a bit closer, so maybe you're not far enough away. But white should go to f4 anyway. And after that, black's idea must be something like king to g5. Hitting the rook, saying, okay, now you're not in time to go there with the king because, for example, king e7, I would check you, and when you go to the d file, then I can take your rook and you cannot get a queen. Well, you can, but I will skewer you and the queen is lost. So here, this move king g5, hitting the white rook, would have been successful. But on the other hand, it also has some drawbacks. The king is getting very far away from where it was, and thus the white king might be able to run away this way, for example, because the black king is no longer close enough to the f7 square, which would box the white king in. So in this position, my favorite move is just rook d4, because it really supports the pawn, and black is not in time to keep the white king boxed in. So white will play king to e8 no matter what, and after that just get a new queen. Let's have a look at an example. After this king e8, black might try a check and again try to set up some fake mating threat, but this again doesn't work because white gets a queen with a check and thus ends the game. So remember this idea: when the black king is moving towards your rook, which is uncomfortable for the rook, the king will become more comfortable and will have an easier way to get out of there because the black king is no longer in time. All right, that's it for this example. Let's now have a look at another example of pawn on the 7th rank, king of the attacking side in front of the pawn, this time with an a pawn. The same is valid for an h pawn as well, but we will of course not discuss both cases. So again we see the situation: the white king is boxed in at first and we need to take some countermeasures to free him. But this time both king and rook box in the white king, and the white king cannot go to the left because the chessboard is just ending there. So in this position this is a draw, because what white can actually achieve is to expel either the rook or the king, but not both of them. We will have a look at several tries, and we will also figure out how black needs to react in order to hold the draw here, but we will see it's not possible for white to win this. So let's first start with this check. This check from the 7th or 8th rank is never effective because the king will just go to 7th or 8th rank and still box in the white king. So those checks lead nowhere. No progress. Black will stay with the king on those two crucial squares here on c7 and c8, the best squares for the black king. So let's go back. White has some other check, and this is more effective. So now the king needs to leave the c file, and yeah, that is some progress, but it's not enough. Black just goes back to d7, but still now the white rook is not able to fly to b8. So it takes time to get to b8 and expel the rook as well, and in the meantime black could bring his king back to c7. So white cannot really make any progress. If he waits, black also waits. If he waits, black also waits. And the rook cannot really be challenged, except from b7 or b8. But how to get there? You need to get the rook around. But when you do this, the black king will return to c7. And once you try to come around, black will just play the waiting game, keeping the white king boxed in by both rook and king. And once there is rook to b8, black will move away the rook. So now if white is giving a check, black will just stay here. Giving a check, black will just stay. No progress. So the only thing white can try is to try to bring the rook to the c file, expelling the black king as well, and then having expelled rook and king successfully. But black is just in time to prevent the threat with rook to c1. And now, there is basically again no progress made for white. White can no longer give a check on the c file. In fact, if black would have put his rook to the c file from the beginning, then white wouldn't even have this try of giving a check on the c file. So that's probably even safer, but it's still safe enough to have the rook on the b file, cutting the white king. But it would also be very safe to just put the rook here, because then the white rook just has checks from the side, which is not enough. So here the white king is boxed in, and white has no chance to get the king out and move the pawn forward. So this is a draw. And in the next example, we will see a similar position where the king is also boxed in, but just by the rook, and where the black king is far away. and we will learn how to make progress if the black king is very far away, and we will also learn how far the black king needs to be away. So we'll have a look at this. So let's dive into that. And the position we are starting from is this one. So now it's white to move, and here white is indeed winning despite having an a pawn. The reason for that is that the black king is far away, and on g7 it is really far enough away because the black king is not able to run there to c7 in time when the white rook tries to expel the black rook. So white's task must be to bring the rook to the b file, fighting for the b file, winning the b file, and then stepping out with the king. And we will see how to do this. You can also try to figure that out on your own, and I will continue with the solution. Rook c1, trying rook c8, rook b8. The best black can do is try to get closer with the king, but yeah, he won't be in time. So king comes here, rook comes here, and now the black rook needs to move away and the white king will come out. In fact, the black king was very far away here. It would even be enough if we change the position a little bit, because after we just imagine this, we of course wouldn't play like this. Here it's still enough. The black king is still far enough away. We play rook c1, king comes to e7, we play rook c8, setting up the threat of rook to b8. The king comes closer, but it's not close enough. And after rook to b8, the black rook needs to go away. White king will come out. Black's only hope is start checking, but checks will run out quickly as the white king is able to go to the c file. After this check, the pawn is still guarded, and after another check, the pawn needs no further defense, and the white king can run towards freedom and then approach the rook so that the rook will be running out of checks. In fact, if you are defending this position with the black side, I would actually recommend you to go to d6 with the king instead, because it's a bit harder to beat this move. It's also lost, but white needs to be a bit more accurate. Rook to b8 again. Black goes rook a2. White is running out with the king, but the key difference is here that white cannot go to a6 as rook a2, king b6. The king would not be able to leave the b file. And going forward on the a file doesn't work, because after check you need to return b, because otherwise the a7 pawn would drop. So instead here white would have to go to c8. And now black has another check. And in order not to repeat moves, white needs to go to d8. And after that, black will try to checkmate. This time it's not a fake threat, but it's a real threat. And white has quite a narrow winning path, but it's enough. White plays rook to b6, check, expelling the king. And now still needs to be careful, because if you queen, then you will drop the queen with rook to h8. So white has a bunch of winning moves here, but the nicest is rook to c6, giving a check. Because if the black king takes, then we will queen with a check and win the black rook in the process. And if the black king goes anywhere else, there will just be rook to c8, supporting the pawn. And yeah, the rook checks don't help, as check, king b8. There's no way to stop the pawn. The last trick is just to hope that white under promotes and takes the rook, so that there will be checkmate on b7, but that's of course not happening. White takes a queen and black is lost. So what do we get out of this position? What do we learn? So here white is successful because he can challenge this rook and the black king is not in time to box in the white king. In fact, we started with a position where the black king is cut very far. This is enough for white to win, but it was even enough for white to win if we started from this position here, because white is still in time to transfer the rook to b8 before the black king had reached c7. So that's it. Keep this idea in mind. You need to bring the rook over to fight for this file, and then also with an a or h pawn you can win the game. Otherwise you can't. If you cannot get this going, then usually this is a draw, but if the king is far away you have chances. So that's it for this video. Hope you enjoyed it. If so, please like and subscribe, and I hope to see you in the next one. Goodbye.